Before this episode, if you want to see the words as well as hear them, get exclusive content, access to the regular episodes before anyone else, and take part in the monthly questions and comments edition, you can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify and get all of that for the price of a very average coffee a month. Okay, let's get on with it. Timothy Busfield is facing the fight of his life, and it's a fight where every word...
I mean, on the set at work, I probably may have touched them, and never inappropriately or sexually.
So when he's in front of the grand jury, what he says is under scrutiny. And my scrutiny isn't going to please him. Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're new to this, I've studied the words of thousands of criminals, so I can show you how people use words to lie, to cheat and manipulate, and I can show you what the truth sounds like too. So in February this year, Timothy Busfield was in front of a grand jury, which led to him facing serious charges which he denies. And just recently, audio has been released from that grand jury hearing, and we're going to look at some statements that have been released, or some quotes that have been released from that as well. We're going to hear some of it, we're going to read some of it, and we're going to look at the words that he uses to see what we can learn about how he is facing and how he is treating these allegations. Let's listen to that first bit again.
I mean, on the set at work, I probably may have touched them, and never inappropriately or sexually.
So he starts off there, and I believe the question that was put to him was, did you touch them? And he says, I mean, on the set at work, I probably may have touched them. And this is interesting. We'll see all the way through here. He's very focused on the fact that these allegations took place on a set of a television program. No need to qualify it like that. Like, it either happened or it didn't happen. But he seems to be wanting just to focus on the location of the set. So did you touch them? It could be yes or no, but he wants to say, look, this is what happened on the set. I mean, on the set at work, and then he stutters, and he stutters on the word I. And when we stutter on the word I, we're very often just afraid to take ownership of what is coming. I probably may have touched them. And it's very stuttery right there, as if he is having psychological issues joining himself with what he's about to say. Stress is inside him there. I'd be stressed in front of a grand jury as well. So I'm not saying this is a sign of any sort of guilt. This is just an indication of severe stress. And then he says, I probably may have touched them. That's very uncertain. It's just probably. May. It's not I did, I didn't. It's just this sort of vagueness. I probably may have touched them. But then he seems to get very certain and say, never inappropriately or sexually. That is not as qualified as the, probably may, but just never inappropriately or sexually. He can't remember what happened, but he can say with certainty what didn't happen, a point worth noting. And then I think we've got some personal definitions at play. What does touch mean? We're going to see his definition of touch as we go through this, and inappropriately. What does that mean as well? You know, like my version of touching someone inappropriately might be different from someone else's version of touching inappropriately. We all have different meanings for what touch would mean in this scenario and what inappropriate would mean on this scenario, as we'll see as he goes through this. His version of inappropriate might not match what your version of inappropriate is. And then finally, inappropriate comes first, sexually comes second. And again, that's a tough one to talk about, because again, what is that sort of touching? So personal definitions, I believe, very much at play here. Let's have a listen to some more from Timothy Busfield and the grand jury.
The career suicide of me going in and committing a sexual assault on anybody. I've never done that to anybody. The fact that I would sexually assault with my boss in the studio there, and then get hired back to run the show, would be completely unprecedented.
Right, so there he says, the career suicide of me going in and committing a sexual assault on anybody. I've never done that to anybody. Now, you'll notice that here he's talking in a very wide sense. He's moving away from the allegations, which are about specific people, and just talking in the grand sense. Anybody. So he's not actually denying in this quote the specific allegations that are put to him and that he is charged with. This is just about anybody. It's very broad and it's very, very big, but it doesn't deal with the specific allegations that are put to him. Then he says, the fact I would sexually assault, and then he names the category of person that he would sexually assault. It's on the screen if you can see the video version of this. Otherwise, I'm not putting it in because I want to get this to as many people as possible, and that sort of thing would just limit the reach of this episode. So the fact that I would sexually assault names the category of person with my boss in the studio there and then get hired back to run the show, it would be completely unprecedented. So first of all, we seem to have something here which is a embedded confession. The fact, and that's a fact, not, an allegation, it's a fact. The fact that I would sexually assault, well, that is really interesting. Interesting in so many ways. He's describing it as a fact, not a thought, not a concept, not an allegation, just he's calling it a fact. Now that feels like, is that a little bit of leakage to me? On the other hand, he actually goes very vivid on what the allegation is, sexual assault. He doesn't soften it and downplay it and call it this or that. He really does take it on. But this whole thing is not a denial. He says, the fact I would do that with my boss in the studio there and then get hired back to run the show would be completely unprecedented. Now, that's not a denial, and everything is unprecedented until it happens. So this is not any great conceptual, this didn't happen. It's real false logic that is going on there from him. And also, is this just a little bit of social proof? A little bit of, look, I was hired back to run the show, so this could not have happened. Well, it could if no one knew about it. Do you know what I mean? This is just really, really weak logic. Also, and let me just read it again and then give you my conclusion on this. He says, the fact that I would sexually assault with my boss in the studio there and then get hired back to run the show would be completely unprecedented. He seems to suggest that it's possible. It could have happened if the boss wasn't there. The fact the boss was there was the thing that stopped me doing it, not the fact that, it would be a completely wrong thing to do. That, despite the non-softening, is an extremely weak form of denial. We then have some statements from him that have been reported in the grand jury. So we haven't heard this, so there may be stutters, pauses, or transcriptions that are wrong here, but let's look at them. Statement 1 that I've read, I didn't do this, is what he said. Now, this is two things. Number one, that is downplaying the allegations. That's just downplaying very serious allegations to a much softer word. This. I didn't do this. And very often with criminals, we see them downplaying and softening the thing that they're accused of in a very, very basic manner. If you ask a criminal who's robbed a bank, did you steal that money? They'll say, I didn't take any money, and they'll take the steal and they'll make it take. Talking to a potential murderer, did you murder this person? I didn't harm anybody, is what they might say, and they'll be softening the allegation when they speak. It's something that we do a lot psychologically. We almost have no control over it. It's not a deliberate thing. It's the fact that we don't want to mention the thing in the allegation. It's really, really disturbing to us. I didn't do this, is what he said. He then says, I have never, ever been inappropriate in any way, physically, sexually, in any way with, and then there's a category of person again. So this is, again, it's extremely broad. It is not about the specific allegation in question. I have never, ever, and that word never, we say never a lot when we don't mean not at any time, which is the actual definition of never. Just watch out for it. You will see people say, I'd never take drugs. And they have taken drugs. I never drink on a school night, and they drink on a school night. I have never, ever been inappropriate. And again, personal definition on inappropriate. Like, what does that mean? What does inappropriate mean? It could be, again, downplaying the allegations. What has been put to him is not you've been inappropriate, it's that you've done specific allegation and never been inappropriate in any way. So this is, again, completely broad. It's not dealing with the specific allegation that is there. It's just a very, very broad denial in any way with, and then he names the category of person that he is accused of assaulting, not the actual person, no reference to the actual specific incident again. I'm not attracted to that. I've never been attracted to that. Now, I'm not an expert in the psychological conditions that lead to people acting this way, but I believe attraction is not always one of them. An assault like this doesn't have to be about attraction. It can be about power and so on as well. So again, these are really, really weak denials. He then goes big and broad again. He says, I've only been and always been attracted to adult women. Again, this is just so broad and big, and again, does not necessarily mean anything about the fact that he didn't do this. This is about attraction, not about attacking people. So I've only been and always been attracted to adult women, or another category of women, slightly older people, throughout my entire life. Again, throughout my entire life, it's kind of like that. I'm attracted to women, i.e., I got married. That's what I think he's saying here. So therefore, I couldn't have done it. And we know that people will do these forms of attacks, that people that are married, people that have long-term relationships with women will do attacks like this. So this is just real false logic. I want to go back to the start of that again, and when he says, I didn't do this, because it's going to become relevant to something else. I didn't do this is something very, although it's downplaying, it's something in front of us. What's this? This is my pointer. What's that? It's the window. It's further away from me. Do you know what I mean? So I'm showing you this. I can't show you the window. It's that over there. I wouldn't call it this because you can't see it. So that infers a kind of, although he's like softening it, this is more close than some of the other words that he could have used there. This is very much something that is right in front of him. He then says, and I've never ever been inappropriate like that. I've never ever been inappropriate. Again, what does he mean by inappropriate and like that? Well, that's a qualification. Have you been inappropriate in another way? Because, before you said, I've never ever been inappropriate, didn't you? Yeah, I've never been inappropriate in any way. And now it's just, I've never ever been inappropriate like that, which leaves the door open there to other sorts of inappropriate. And then I told you he's very into the location of when this happened. Certainly, I would never allow it at work. Wow, let's unpack that. Is that saying it would be all right outside of work? I would allow it outside of work? If I wasn't at work, then I would allow it? That's what that implies. Certainly, I would never allow it at work. Allow is interesting. That suggests some control over it as well. So, wow, that one blew my mind. It is saying, terms there, that if it was outside of work, it would be different. Certainly, I would never allow it at work. It's absolutely taboo and would never ever do it and never have done it ever. Let's break all that down. It's absolutely taboo. Sometimes that's the attraction of the whole thing, isn't it? The fact that something taboo is going on. Again, this is just, it's so weak. Obviously, it's absolutely taboo. That's why you're in front of a grand jury and would never, ever do it. Now, that again, that's downplaying. And that is creating a little bit of distance because it's not talking about what the actual allegations are, and have never done it ever. Completely, again, all these absolutes. It's absolutely taboo. Would never, ever do it. I never, ever have done it ever. This could all be said a lot more plainly. This didn't happen. I did not do this. I did not. And then naming the specific allegation could all be said a hell of a lot more cleanly and more short, and in a more short way. However, he's using a lot of words. And instead of saying, I didn't do this specific thing that I'm accused of, it's I've never ever done anything wrong ever, which is not a direct denial of the allegations. Let's move on to the second statement that I've found. He says, my career's done. I'm cancelled. I'll never work again just based on people's fear that I would do this again. And even if it wasn't true, I'm done. Wow, now this one has got so much inside it. We've got the self-pity of my career is done. And then he says, based on people's fear that I would do this again. Now, he might be voicing the people that he's talking about here. We're not going to hire Timothy because he will do this again. However, it looks like an embedded confession. I could take that quote from him and say, Timothy Busfield says I would do this again. It's like an embedded confession inside of all that. He wants to say, based on people's fear that, this is true and, that it would happen once more, but he uses that and he gets very, very close to saying, I've done what I'm accused of there. I would do this Again, we have the word this in there. Once more, it's that closeness of the this that's right in front of you, rather than I would do what I'm accused of, or I would do these horrible things, or anything like that. It's the downplaying in this, but also the closeness of this. It's a concept that he's talking about that he is very close to. Again, is, just really worrying that I would do this, but it's again that is there that he says that is really worrying. It's not people's fear I would do that, or, I would, assault people. It's again, the again in there is really worried. And then there's this part, and even if it wasn't true, I'm done. Well, what is he saying there? Even if it wasn't true, I'm done. Is he saying there, it's true, I'm done because it's true? That is what the logic of those words seem to get at. Even if it wasn't true, I'm done. Maybe it's a misspeak. Maybe it's a misspeak. He's saying, maybe he meant to say, even though it's not true, I'm done. But that's not what is said in that quote. Even if it wasn't true, I'm done. And it could be a misspeak. He could have meant to say something different, or it could be a misquote. I'm open to that. But it's that word if gets me as well. It's, 'cause the door is open if he says if. It's not solid. If it wasn't true. Not even though it's not true. Or it's not true. The if opens up that it seems to be possible in his mind with that word if. This could be true, this could not be true. That's what the word if has. So he seems to have the concept that this could be true inside his head. He carries on and says, I've lost TV shows, a movie they've digitally replaced me from, my agency fired me, I'm done. This is not about me or a pity thing. And then we have statement 3, talking about the father of the two people that are making the allegations. The dad would say, go hug Uncle Tim. So I would touch them. I never initiated that. Now, we've got that word touch there again. And this is personal definitions. The touching you're accused of is not a platonic sort of hug. But he does seem to want to say, so I would touch them. And I worry here that what he is trying to do is saying touching is innocent. That seems to be the whole part of this. Did I have my arms around those boys? Absolutely. Arms around it is... I get strictly in dictionary terms that is touching, but it's not touching as you are alleged to have touched people. Did I have my arms around these boys? Absolutely. In pictures? Absolutely. In pictures, when the parents ask you to smile and give them a tickle under the ribs like you would your own kid, yes. Now, that is a lot going on there. Number one, I think he wants to use some social proof here, going, you tickle your own kids, therefore me tickling someone else's kids is not a bad thing. That's why he said, he doesn't say, I gave them a tickle, only a tickle. He's saying, you do it. You do it. You can relate to me. You're just like me. And now I'm the one that's jammed up for it, even though I'm doing what we all do, like you would your own kid. Yes. Logic doesn't work very well, though, because he's talking about our own children, not children that we work with, which is just, again, really weak. The stuff he's doing, the things he's saying to deny this, so weak. They kind of crack under pressure. And he doesn't say, I only tickled them to make them smile for the camera. He's not saying that at all. He's saying, in pictures, when the parents ask you to smile and give them a tickle under the ribs like you would your own kid, yes. Did I ever touch them inappropriately? Never, ever once with any... names the category of the person as well. Did I touch them inappropriately? We've got that word inappropriate again. Like, what does that mean? He might have one definition of it. The law might have another definition of it. You might have another definition of it. I have another definition of it. He's not dealing with the crux of the allegation when he says that. So in conclusion from me, there is a strong sense of embedded confessions in what he says. I really can see the fact that he seems to be saying these incidents did happen at times, and that it's true. That's what he seems to be saying at times. He denies the allegations in the legal sense, but in the word sense, I see some really, really strange things there. There is a really strong sense of location there, only talking about the set. And I get the impression from when he talks, he's saying, oh, it would be different if it was outside of work. He's kind of saying, oh, this never happened at work on a film set, but, certainly at work this wouldn't happen. That really, really worries me. I don't know what did something happen outside of the film set, or is he just trying to qualify, the film set, is that where the cameras are and there's other parts where I don't know. But the way he talks about location and qualifies things in location really, really worries me. It does seem at times he's saying this would be all right if it wasn't on a film set. The denials are so broad. He very rarely talks about the specific individuals or the specific allegations that are there. It's just, I've never, ever done a bad thing, ever. It's just really, really broad. And the world's grey. The world is grey. And then I do think there are personal definitions at play. What is qualifying as touching? What is inappropriate? I think there are things going on there where he's saying one thing, hoping that we take it to mean one thing, but in his head, he's like, oh, I meant a slightly different thing. I'm really concerned by that. He denies the allegations. Let's see what happens as it goes to court. Do like this if you want it to get to more people, or leave a comment or share it with people who you think would be interesting, and how we can learn more about people, and sometimes some very bad people, from the words that they use. That's like, subscribe, comment. It tells this platform that this should be getting out to more people. And you can check out more at neveratruerword.com. I'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word. And remember, the truth is always in the words.